Right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Foster Consulting's AI-assisted content creation class, creating content that search engines and humans trust. I'm Dana Hinders, Director of Content Operations at Foster. I've spent more than 20 years as a writer and editor, and I've always believed that great content should earn trust before it earns clicks. My focus is on combining strong editorial standards, real-world storytelling, and practical systems to help create content that's credible, human first, and built to last.
I'm Jennifer Weissman, Manager of Content Operations. I'm a former attorney and a graduate of Boston College Law School, and I bring that legal background into the content I create every day. I specialize in taking complex legal topics and making them clear, engaging, and easy for clients to understand. Today, Dana and I want to start by acknowledging something you already know. Your professions are built on trust. Patients trust their doctors with their lives. Clients trust their attorneys with their futures. That trust is hard earned, and it's often the first thing at risk when your online content doesn't reflect the expertise you actually have. Here's the problem. Most law firms and medical practices are either not creating content at all, or they're outsourcing it to generalists who don't understand the nuance of their field. The result is content that's generic, legally and medically imprecise, and frankly, unworthy of the professions it's supposed to represent. What we're going to cover today is a framework used to help professionals like you create content that doesn't just rank, but gets selected as the answers by AI tools, voice search, and Google's featured snippets. More importantly, this approach to answer engine optimization builds the kind of credibility that converts a searcher into a patient or a client.
All right, this diagram again outlines the different topics that we're going to cover in the 6 weeks of this class. It's the backbone of everything we're going to discuss. However, I want you to look at it not as a marketing workflow, but as a clinical or legal process, because that framing will make it more intuitive for you. Think about how you approach a complex case. You don't jump straight to treatment or litigation. You take the time to assess, you plan, you execute carefully, you apply guardrails such as informed consent or malpractice considerations. You refine your approach based on outcomes, and then you systematize what works. This flow helps you do the same thing for content. The result, as you can see at the bottom, is content that's trusted, authoritative, and serves human needs while being readily understood by answer engines. That's not just good marketing, that's your professional reputation online.
The planning phase is where most law firms and medical practices fail, not because they lack expertise, but because they skip this step entirely. Someone says, we need more blog content, and a junior staff member or an AI tool just starts writing. The problem is that without a plan, AI defaults to generic, and generic content in your fields isn't just unhelpful, it can be misleading and in some cases dangerous. For a law firm, the difference between someone researching medical malpractice and someone who just received a denial letter from a hospital and has 90 days left to file is enormous. The content plan for those two people is completely different. For a medical practice, the difference between a patient researching plantar fasciitis and a patient who just got a surgical recommendation and is terrified requires a completely different tone, structure, and emphasis. Planning is how we honor the human on the other side of the search bar.
That's such a good point, Jen. And what I'd like to do now is share an example of a piece of AI-assisted content that was thoughtfully planned and as a result has ranked very highly. Can you see my screen, the Google search? All right, you'll notice that if you search for gabapentin for foot neuropathy, the very first article that appears cited here is from our client, the Foot Institute. And then it's also first down here in the search engine page results, but you'll also notice that it ranks actually above the National Institutes of Health and above results from the Mayo Clinic and other really high, well-known authoritative sites. This was a topic that we came across during our initial onboarding for the client. We had a questionnaire, and one of the questions was, what do you wish that your patients patients would know when they came to you. And this gentleman serves a lot of people with diabetes who are taking gabapentin. And he wanted them to know that gabapentin was something that isn't always effective. It has some serious downsides, and there are really better, other, more effective options that he could use. And because we write about a lot of podiatry content, that was new information to me. I did a little quick Google searching and realized nobody else had taken this angle. So we included this as one of the initial launch pieces of content, and this accounts for the vast majority of traffic on their site. It actually gets over 4,500 views last month. All right, you'll notice that we also took advantage of some of the features in DSS here. We put in a table of contents. We added the Contact Us button at the top. And then we have some pull quotes to make this really easy to skim through and quickly get to the point. Okay, moving on here, we have this slide that gives you 5 questions the Foster team asks before any content is created. The first thing that we ask is the person who is behind the content. We want to know who exactly is reading this. For a personal injury firm, is it the victim? Is it a family member? Is it someone who's not even sure that they have a case? For a podiatry practice, is it a middle-aged runner? Is it an elderly person? Is it a parent who's researching options for their child? The answer to this question is going to change everything about the vocabulary, the tone, and the depth of the content. The moment, essentially, this means we want to ask what situation are they in right now? This is something that we often find people overlooking with AI-generated content. Somebody who's going to be searching at 11 p.m. after they've just received a difficult diagnosis is going to be in a completely different emotional state than someone who's casually researching symptoms during their lunch break to decide if they actually have a problem. Your content needs to meet the reader where they are. As for the problem, we want to define a very specific question that the reader needs answered, not a general topic such as car accidents or medical malpractice. We want something specific along the lines of, how do I know if my surgeon made a mistake during my knee replacement surgery? That's a question you can actually answer with precision and usefulness. For the decision, we want to help them make an informed choice. Are they deciding between providers, between treatment options, between filing a claim or just letting it go? Content that helps someone make a decision is going to be far more valuable than content that just simply informs. The outcome refers to your call to action, but it's also your ethical obligation. A person who's in pain needs to know what they should do next. A potential client with a legal issue needs a clear path to a consultation. Before you start writing, please take the time to think about what success is going to look like for your reader. If you don't take the time to define these things, AI is going to produce content that sounds authoritative, but serves no one in particular. That's actually worse than adding no content to your website at all, because it gives the impression of expertise without delivering it.
Okay, next we'll talk about topic cluster and question research. Think about how expertise is built in your field. A physician who specializes in podiatry doesn't just know one thing about feet. They know everything: anatomy, biomechanics, surgical techniques, rehab protocols, and how all those things interact. That depth is what makes them the expert. Topic clusters, which you may also hear referred to as the hub and spoke strategy, work the same way online. Instead of writing one article about medical malpractice and calling it done, we build a comprehensive hub of content that covers every angle a potential client may approach from. Search engines read that depth of coverage as a signal of genuine expertise. The shift I'm asking you to make is this: stop asking, what should we write about? And start asking the 4 questions on this slide. What core topic are we building authority around? What related questions surround it? What does our ideal patient or client repeatedly ask? And what confusion exists in the marketplace? That last one is gold for your fields. There is enormous confusion in both law and medicine. patients who don't understand the difference between negligence and malpractice, clients who don't know what statute of limitations means for their specific situation. Content that clears up genuine confusion builds trust instantly, and it's exactly the kind of content that gets picked up by AI answer engines.
All right, for this slide, we have an example of how to build a cluster around the topic of plantar fasciitis surgery. Notice what this cluster does. It doesn't just answer one question. It anticipates the full journey of a patient who's considering this surgery. It talks about recovery time, when surgery is actually recommended, what the risks and complications are, and more importantly, what the non-surgical treatment options look like. That last one is especially important. A patient who finds a page on your website that clearly explains conservative treatments, like physical therapy, orthotics, or injections, and positions surgery as a later step that should be considered when those options haven't worked, is going to trust you far more than a practice that jumps straight to procedures and sounds more like a direct sales pitch. You can build out a cluster around plantar fasciitis surgery that includes topics like how to know if you're a candidate for surgery, what the procedure involves, how long recovery takes, what success rates look like, and what to expect during rehabilitation. Each of these articles can stand on their own, but together they're going to create a comprehensive resource for someone who's trying to make a decision. This is how you become the trusted source that your patients rely on, not just another option that they scroll past.
Okay, now let's talk about building a topic cluster in the legal field. Think about what actually happens after someone is in a car accident. They don't have just one question, they have a cascade of them, often all at once and usually under stress. They're wondering what to do first, whether they should see a doctor, whether the other driver is at fault, whether their insurance is going to cover anything, and very quickly, whether they need a lawyer. A strong topic cluster meets the entire experience, just not one piece of it. So instead of a single page about car accidents, you're building out content that walks alongside the client's decision-making process. What steps to take immediately after a crash? How fault is determined in your state? What happens if injuries show up days later? How insurance companies handle claims? And what it really means to accept or reject a settlement offer. One of the most powerful pieces in a cluster like this is content that helps someone self-assess. For example, when should you handle a claim on your own, and when should you talk to an attorney? That kind of guidance builds credibility because it doesn't assume every situation leads to legal representation. When these pieces are connected, you're doing two things at once. You're giving a potential client a clear path through a confusing situation, and you're showing search engines that your firm understands this topic from every angle. That combination, clarity for the user and depth for the algorithm, is what turns a website into a trusted resource instead of just another listing.
Right. As you're planning content, it's important to think about the difference between content intent and question intent. This is one of the most important distinctions in the framework, and I think it's one that's going to resonate especially well with healthcare providers and attorneys, because this is something you already do intuitively in your practice. When a patient comes to you with a symptom, you don't just treat the symptom. You take the time to ask why they're really there. You dig deeper. You ask if they are scared. You ask if they're seeking a second opinion. If they're hoping you'll tell them that they don't need surgery, or that maybe it's another issue that they're suffering from altogether. The presenting complaint and the underlying need are often two different things. The same principle is true online. Someone who is searching how long does plantar fasciitis recovery take might be someone who's already scheduled surgery and just wants reassurance or some tips for how to plan on how much time they'll need off work. Or they might be someone who's terrified of surgery and is just looking for a reason to avoid it. They could be comparing you to another surgeon, or they might be a family member who's helping a loved one decide between treatment options. Your content needs to serve multiple intents within a single piece. Lead with the direct answer for the person who just wants the facts. Then provide context and nuance for the person who's making a decision. Finally, address the emotional dimension for the person who's feeling a little bit afraid or uncertain. These three intent categories, informational, comparative, and conversion, map reasonably well to stages of the client or patient journey. Informational is awareness, comparative is consideration, and conversion is decision. Great content can serve all three. Keywords, while still important, can only tell you what someone typed. Planning is what tells you what those keywords actually mean. And this interpretive layer is where human expertise adds value, where AI alone can't.
Answer engines like Google's AI overviews, ChatGPT, and Perplexity, voice assistants, that kind of thing, are trained to look for answer blocks, clearly structured, concise passages that directly answer a specific question. If your content buries the answer in paragraph 4 after 2 paragraphs of history and background, the algorithm will skip over you entirely. The example on this slide is worth examining. Plantar fasciitis surgery typically requires 3 to 10 weeks for initial recovery, with a full return to high impact activities often taking up to 3 months. That sentence leads. Everything else, the nuances, the exceptions, the individual factors, come after. For legal content, this might look like, in Florida, you generally have 2 years from the date of a car accident to file a claim, though several exceptions can extend or shorten this window. Lead with the answer, then explain the exceptions, then advise them to consult an attorney. Humans appreciate this because it respects their time. Machines reward it because it's unambiguous. It's a rare case where optimizing for the algorithm is also the genuinely more helpful thing to do.
Next, we'd like to address something that sometimes makes our clients uncomfortable. Zero-click results means that someone can get their answer without ever visiting your website. Often, that feels like a loss. However, this is how we like to reframe it for a professional services firm. Being the source of the answer is a credibility signal, even when the person doesn't click on the link. When someone asks their phone, "How long do I have to sue my doctor in Texas?" and your firm's name appears as the source of the answer, that's valuable brand exposure. And critically, when that person is ready to hire an attorney, when the situation has become real and urgent, they're going to remember who the authority was. For medical practices, this is even more acute. If a patient searches a symptom and your practice's content is the AI-cited source, you become a source associated with trusted medical information in their mind before they ever call to make an appointment. And if you think back to that gabapentin and foot neuropathy article that I showed earlier, and how they were ranked higher than the National Institutes of Health, that's a huge credibility signal right there. The structural elements on this slide, definitions, bullet points, numbered steps, FAQs, etc., aren't just formatting choices. They're specific signals that tell answer engines. This page is a clean, citable source. Think about the questions that patients call your front desk to ask, or the questions that come up repeatedly in consultations. These are your FAQ topics. That's not guesswork. That's operational intelligence that you already have.
That's a great point, Dana. I think that's one of the best ways to come up with new questions. There's also a couple other ways in case you exhaust those. Yesterday, I was researching something on Virginia drunk driving law, and I Googled Virginia DWI law and looked at the people also ask section of the Google search, and I got some great questions like, what is the new law in Virginia about drunk driving? What is the 3 hour rule in Virginia? How likely is jail time for a first DUI? So that's one way you can do it. Another good option is to look at your case results. Think of the cases, the clients you've represented, and the type of clients you would like to represent again. So, for example, if you had a settlement or a jury verdict about a truck accident where a truck rear-ended a car on Interstate 90, think about the facts of that case and what you want to attract in new clients. Maybe you want more truck accident cases. Maybe you want more rear end accident cases. Maybe you want to target crashes on I-90. Maybe the injury was a brain injury and you want more brain injury clients. So write about the case result and then create some content that supplements that.
That's such a good point. I would like to point out that a lot of our clients do not use case results effectively, or they have very brief pages that just include a couple sentences. Jen and I would like to urge you to create complete case results with a full detailed story. These are valuable pages to link to practice areas and other pieces of content on your site, but they also help illustrate your expertise in a way that the typical blogs, libraries, and FAQs can't.
Agreed. And I just add that a lot of attorneys worry about doing it, especially in confidential settlements, but you can do it without giving away anything that you're not supposed to. It's okay to say that the settlement amount was confidential.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. And if any of our audience would like some more information on this topic, feel free to reach out. We'll provide the QR code to schedule an appointment with Jen and I at the end of this session, and we'd be happy to walk you through it specific to your site.
Okay, I'll be brief here, but I don't want to skip it because there are format choices that are particularly high value for your fields. Video is underutilized in both law and medicine. A 2-minute video of a physician explaining what to expect from a procedure in plain language is extraordinarily powerful, both for the patient experience and for search. Google increasingly indexes video content, and YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. For attorneys, short explainer videos answering common questions like what should I do immediately after a car accident perform exceptionally well on both search and social. They also convey personality and trustworthiness in a way that text alone cannot. FAQ series are the single highest ROI content format for professional services in my experience. They're easy to produce, they map perfectly to AEO, and they directly address the questions your target clients are already asking. Downloadable assets, guides like what to do if you think you've been the victim of medical malpractice, or 5 questions to ask before scheduling orthopedic surgery, serve double duty. They're useful to the reader, and they often prompt someone to take the next step toward contacting you. The key insight is this: your ideal patient or client is not always sitting at a desktop reading a long article. Plan for how they actually consume information, often on a phone, often in short sessions, often when distracted and under stress. It's also worth noting that multimodal format planning can include content presented on your various social media channels. Social media is not just a nice to have anymore. It's a core part of how people research, evaluate, and choose who they want to work with. LinkedIn in particular has become a go-to platform for professionals looking to connect, learn, and make decisions. And it is the most cited domain for professional queries in AI search. As part of a broader content plan, LinkedIn works especially well because it gives new life to the content you're already creating. Blog posts, videos, FAQs, and case highlights can all be repurposed into engaging posts that reach the right audience. It also allows for more direct interaction, commenting, messaging, and participating in conversations, which helps turn visibility into real relationships. In week 6 of our course, we'll dive deeper into how to repurpose one blog, library article, or FAQ into multiple content assets that improve user experience while saving you time and money. The goal with this approach isn't to create more content for the sake of volume. It's to get more value out of the expertise you already have, while making it easier for potential clients or patients to find, understand, and act on your information.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Before we move on, I'd just like to chime in that the answerthepublic.com website can be a really great source for FAQs. I think that's one that we forgot to mention earlier.
Okay, content calendars, one of my favorites. A content calendar doesn't have to be complicated, but it does make a big difference in how intentional your content becomes. Instead of deciding week to week what to write, it gives you a clear view of what you've covered, what's coming next, and where there might be gaps. For example, it helps you make sure you're not accidentally over focusing on one area while leaving other important client questions unanswered. It also helps you balance different types of content. some that educates, sometimes some that helps people compare options, and some that supports decision making. It's also useful for staying consistent. You don't need to publish constantly, but having a plan makes it much easier to show up regularly and build momentum over time. And if your practice has predictable busy seasons, a calendar helps you get ahead of those instead of reacting to them. To make this easier, we've included a content calendar template in your course registration materials. You can use it as is or adapt it to your workflow, but the goal is just to give you a simple starting point so you're not building this from scratch.
All right. Prompts are obviously something that everyone who's interested in AI likes to have strong opinions on. What we found at Foster is that most AI-generated content turns out mediocre, not because of the tools. It's because of the prompts. And the reason that the prompts are weak is that the planning hasn't actually been done first. The weak prompt on this slide, write an article about medical malpractice is something that you might type in if you're just starting to use ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, or another LLM. It's technically accurate, but it's going to give you content that's completely generic and useful to no one in particular. Taking the time to plan out your prompt is going to produce something more genuinely useful. The example I have here specifies the jurisdiction, the exact question we'd like answered, the structure that's required, and the context that makes the answer actionable. And this is going to be the same approach that you're going to use regardless of whether you choose ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. Foster uses several LLMs in our content process, and we'd like to encourage you to try the same prompt in different tools and then kind of mix and match to learn about which one best matches your particular writing style. When we build content systems for law firms and medical practices, the prompts that we develop are often going to be a page or more long. They include the specific reader persona, the exact question that's being answered, the required structure, tone guidelines, legal or medical accuracy requirements, a call to action, and the word count. That level of specificity produces first drafts that require much less editing and perform significantly better in search. For me, this is something that comes back to my journalism background. Every story I've ever written starts with the same framework, the 5 W's and H: who, what, when, where, why, and how. This is a structure that exists because it forces clarity. It ensures that you're not just writing, you're producing something that's going to be meaningful for a very specific audience. The same principle applies to how you write AI prompts. If you're looking for a really easy to remember way to improve your prompts, here's how you can use this framework. Who, you ask who the prompt is for. Be specific about the reader, whether it's a recent accident victim, a concerned family member, or a patient considering surgery. Talk about what the exact question being answered is, not the general topic, the very specific question. And again, don't be afraid to cover niche topics. Those questions that other sites aren't answering, those are gold mines for showing up in AI search. Think about when the reader is searching. Is it right after the incident? Is it weeks later? Are they approaching a critical decision point? And then where does this apply? This is especially critical for legal content, given the differences in jurisdiction, setting, and context. Think about why it matters to them. What's at stake for the reader, both emotionally and practically? And then how is simply how should the answer be structured? Again, it's really important for AEO to have a direct answer first, then an explanation, and then the next steps that you would like the reader to take. Even if you don't build a long, detailed prompt, just taking the time to run through these 6 elements are dramatically going to improve your output. At the end of the day, strong prompts aren't just about talking to AI. They're about thinking clearly. And that's the same thing that you're doing in your professional work. If you'd like some more guidance on prompts, Foster has created 2 books that we would encourage you to download. The first one here is Prompting Resources for Law Firms. It includes 5 rules for using artificial intelligence to connect with your perfect clients. And these prompts will help guide you through different types of content creation. You can scan the QR code to download your copy. And then we also have a version of this that's been created for healthcare practices.
Thanks, Dana. Every piece of content the Foster team produces goes through a checklist before it's published. I'd encourage you to adopt this as a standard quality control step in your content workflow. Let's walk through these from the perspective of your practices. First, does it clearly answer the primary question? If you have to read 3 paragraphs to find the answer, revise it. Clarity is a courtesy. 2, are headings structured logically? Think of the headings as the table of contents for a busy professional who's scanning, not reading. They should be able to navigate to exactly what they need. 3, does it fit within a topic cluster? Isolated content is far less powerful than interconnected content. Every piece should link to related pieces on your site. Next, is the format appropriate for how users search? A quick factual answer needs a different format than a guide through a complex decision. Finally, does it support both human clarity and machine readability? This is a dual test. Read it as a person. Then ask if a search engine were extracting key facts from this, would it find them easily? One critical point I always make with healthcare and legal clients: if the content doesn't pass the actors standard you'd apply to a patient discharge summary or a client letter, it shouldn't be published. The guardrails in your fields are real, and content that's imprecise can cause harm or create liability. AI produces drafts, qualified humans review them. That review step is non-negotiable.
To close here, I want to close with a core message I hope you take from today. You already know how to plan. This is something that you're doing every day. When you approach a complex surgery, you plan. When you build a legal strategy, you plan. The discipline of defining the problem before proposing a solution is fundamental to both the legal and medical professions. What Jen and I are asking you to do is simply apply that same discipline to your content creation efforts. Define who the content is for, define what it must accomplish, define how it should be structured, and define where it fits into your broader practice marketing system. When your planning is done well, AI is going to become an enormously powerful tool, not a shortcut that produces generic output, but a leverage tool that takes your professional expertise and structures it into content that serves your patients and clients at scale. AI fills in the draft. You design the blueprint. Your clinical or legal expertise is the blueprint. We're just here to help you turn that into a system. The next time someone in your office says, we should write something about X, don't start with the writing. Start with the 5 questions that we outlined on slide 4. Who is reading this? What situation are they in? What question do they need answered? What decision are they making? What outcome are they hoping to achieve? Once you answer those questions first, everything else will get easier. And again, if you'd like to take the time to discuss planning for your website in depth, we're here to help. You can scan this QR code to request a complimentary 30 or 60-minute content strategy session with Jen and I. This is an appointment where we will go over the strategies that we use to plan for our clients. It's meant to be a useful, low-pressure conversation. We're just going to focus on where you are now, what's working, and what could be strengthened, so you leave with a clear sense of direction and next steps. And then finally, if you're interested in taking your use of AI beyond content and really starting to use AI in your intake, sales, and day-to-day operations, we'd love to have you join us at Foster's monthly AI Mastermind. This is a small, hands-on group where we talk about what's actually working in AI right now, not just tools, but how to think about using them effectively. If you're in this course, you'll receive a free 6-month trial membership to the mastermind. Keep an eye on your inbox for that invite. And if you don't see it, just reach out to us and we'll make sure that you're all set up. Does anybody have any questions?
I have some questions, Dana and Jen.
All right.
Whoever wants to field them. So some of, as we worked with different clients, we put a lot of time into planning, but sometimes you can kind of go down the rabbit hole of planning. How much time should someone really devote to planning before they're digging down keywords and ask, all the different tools. So how much time should someone kind of budget for planning out content?
It's a great question. I will let Jen take that since Jen does the bulk of the planning for our 60 plus clients every month.
So that varies a lot. It depends how much content is already on the site and whether there's a specific goal. But I'll tell you, I just got done with reviewing all of our clients' content for March, and the pieces that are performing the best are the ones where we spent the most time planning. And so once you have a good topic, the writing is pretty easy. Um, you can write the best article in the world, but if you don't have the right topic, it won't matter. So my personal opinion is you put more time into planning and a little less into writing.
Oh, little 70-30 action, huh?
Yeah.
And I'll just chime in that planning isn't necessarily something you need to schedule. Find for me that when I'm reading about a topic or when I'm doing something else, often I'll get an idea and then I'll turn around, I'll run over to my desk and I'll jot it down real quick. So your best ideas aren't necessarily going to come to you during working hours. So just be open to inspiration wherever you find it.
Agreed. And you may be writing an article, and as you go to put the internal links in, as we discussed before, so everything's woven, you may be like, I don't have an article about this really core topic that I should have an article about. So you add that to your plan.
That's a good point. We find at least a couple of those gaps every month, don't we?
Yeah.
And that brings me to another question. So I know when we're adding new content, we want to link to the old content that we have on our site so Google can see that interweb. But how often should we be going back to like old content and linking it to new content? Or is that in the same process? Or is that kind of like an audit that you would do at some point?
Well, it can be part of a structured content audit, but I would say that you want to just keep on top of your linking efforts. That's easy to get really far behind, and it doesn't take that long to go back in DSS and just edit those articles, those older pieces of content as you're adding new content to make sure that everything is connected while it's top of mind for you.
Awesome.
Yeah, and in the clearest sense, you're going to have that hub page first, like 10 types of car accidents, and then you're going to write a page about each. As you write the page, go back and add the link onto the main article.
Got it. And then how many links should each piece of content have typically?
Well, that really depends on how long the content is and what the topic is. We always tell our writers that we want links to be really useful. We don't want to force in links that are irrelevant or just completely off topic. But I think generally somewhere between 5 and 10 links is what we use for most of our content.
Awesome. And then something else that kind of came to mind was adding FAQs. You talked about that being such an important part of this, and it really is because that's, we tend to type questions into search or questions into ChatGPT, right? So in the past, we've built out really in-depth FAQ pages. Well, in the past, when we first started, there were short little FAQ answers, right? It was just like, yes, no, this is why. And then we realized that we needed to build longer, more robust content pieces. So we started to build those out. But I'm starting to see a shift where people are adding FAQs actually to the content itself. Would you advise how should we know? Should we be adding them to the piece of content or adding them separately, or it kind of depends?
It does. It really depends on the topic. And again, that's a frustrating answer for people to tell. It depends instead of a yes or no. One thing that we found is really effective in DSS is using that content accordion panel to add FAQs, and then people can click on the ones that they are most interested in. In there, you can provide a short answer, just something really brief, 1 or 2 sentences, but that space also gives you an opportunity to link to a really full, detailed FAQ about that topic.
Awesome.
So a statute of limitations, for example, if we just want to know that the statute of limitations is 2 years, but then maybe somebody wants to read all about that and what the exceptions are, because there are exceptions and maybe they qualify for that. That approach lets you serve the needs of both types of readers.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So you can add that little brief answer, but then expand onto a whole new piece of content. So you're still getting all the SEO power. And then I think Yeah, go ahead, Jen. I'm sorry.
No, another thing with FAQs, if you are writing a blog or a library article, a good strategy is to make your H2s or your subheadings questions because then it's easy to scan. And it gives you, you can write a paragraph or two instead of a whole
Mhm.
article.
Yeah, great point. And then just my last question is, what kind of tools would you recommend? I know you mentioned a few that you guys use, but are there any like top 5 tools that you use in content planning or content writing that you would recommend?
Oh, that's a good question. Very specific tools. I like to set up Google News alerts for topics. I
Mm.
have them set up for all
Yeah.
of the different clients that I write for, and then it'll send you an update of trending news and different things. I saw a study just a couple of days ago about how trending news is still getting a lot of organic search results because Google, all the algorithms, they can't scrape all of the content for AI search that fast. So trending news is an opportunity to earn a lot of traffic.
We see a lot of traffic in the state. A lot of the states change their laws either January 1st or July 1st. So when we write in December or June about the upcoming changes, we see a lot of traffic on those pages.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a great point. I kind of thought that fad had faded, but that's a really good point. Kind of beat the system with AI. So
Oh, Olympic related content. I saw that a lot with our client who practices sports law. When the Olympics come, a lot of that stuff we go through and we refresh it just in anticipation of the traffic boost that it's going to see.
wow, that's a good point. Yeah, because you can just take the content you have and refresh it sometimes to make it new.
Yep.
So
And this is all planning. Plan
yeah.
ahead. That's our
Right.
motto.
Yes. And how far in advance do you guys plan? What is your typical leeway? Are you planning July content now, or kind of how far out do you go?
So it depends. In my ideal world, I like to plan for 3 months at a time because it allows you to see where you're going and make
Great.
sure that you don't have holes and that everything matches up to what you have in your head. Um, Sometimes we do 6 months, sometimes we do less, but 3 months is my sweet spot.
Yeah.
So,
And those
great. Well,
content plans can always be flexible. If there is
Right.
something that happens that's trending news, or if you realize that something's not working and you want to rebalance, don't be afraid to go back and tweak those content plans. They're never set in stone.
mhm. Awesome. Well, thanks, ladies. This was fantastic. I think
Thank you.
I'm out of
Thank
questions.
you.
Yeah.
And next week we will talk about the process of actually creating the content. So we can't wait to share more information about that with you.
Great. Thank
Right.
you.
Thanks.
All
Bye.
right. Bye, guys.